Jay. Thank you. Mic working okay? They gave me 2 mics. Now, I've been mic'd before. I've never been double mic'd. They must think I desperately need help. I'm not going to stand back here. I told Shannon way back in my hereditary, way back, generations ago, there's a tiny bit of Italian. And I have to do this when I talk, and I have to walk around. So I'm going to walk around, but I promise I'll stay on the stage. It's good to be in Oklahoma. I love your state. I've been here many times. We have some wonderful people, Gallagher people here in the state, as we do in all 50 states and in 32 countries around the world. So it's a pleasure to be here. I was in Miami in Miami. Did I get that right? Huh? All right, good. Yeah. I practiced that before I came. When I got there, I told them that the only other place I've been that is really named the same spelling is Florida. And somebody said, well, what about Miami of Ohio? And do you know there is no such city as Miami in Ohio? Did you know that? Little known fact. One of the few really smart things you're going to hear from me, okay? There is no Miami. There's a Miami Heights and a Miami Hills, but no Miami. I'd like to talk to you today. I'd basically like to do 3 things. Relatively simple. Three goals that if at the end of my conversation you get these 3 things, I'll be delighted. The first thing I want to talk about is the difference between compliance and ethics. This is critically important. If you walk out of this room today with anything that you retain from what I said, I hope it will be this, because it's a huge confusion in the world today. Second thing I want to talk to you about is what I referred to as the 3rd ring of an ethical system. It's a little bit unique, and I hope you'll learn something from that. Then the 3rd thing I want to do is things that preachers and ministers have been trying to figure out, and philosophers and theologians for centuries. Why do people do bad things? And I've got just a kind of a simple theory on that. So let me start. First thing I'd like to make sure you understand is the difference between these 2 terms. About 2,500 years ago, a guy named Aristotle started telling the world there's a difference between compliance and ethics. We believed Aristotle in those days. We still believe him today. But an interesting thing happened. He wasn't using those words, by the way. He was speaking Greek. He was using the words ethos and logos, pretty much the same thing. Interesting thing happened in the United States in particular about 20 years ago, around the time of Enron. People began thinking that those 2 terms are synonymous, that they're the same. If it's illegal, it's unethical. If it's legal, it's ethical. That's not true. It wasn't true 2,500 years ago, not true today. There is a difference between those 2 terms. The easiest way I know to remember that difference is with this expression. Compliance tells us what we must do. Ethics tells us what we should. Do you see the difference there? Yeah, okay. Compliance is the minimum. It's the law. We will not break the law. We will not violate a contract. Ethics is the stuff that raises us up above the minimum, makes us, we think, better than the minimum, certainly makes us different from other organizations. Every company that you deal with, every company represented in the room, every company you deal with as customers or clients, we're all subject to basically the same compliance requirements. But every company has unique ethics, because ethics follows the people. Ethics is the stuff that we as a group of people in a company sit down in a room and decide we should do. And it's different everywhere. Everywhere we go, it's unique, all right? So it's about culture, it's about beliefs, it's about values. Values is what you need to think of when you think of ethics. So we need to define values then. So this is what values looks like graphically. I have certain values and you have certain values, and those values are different. Some of the things that I believe to be good and true, some of you do not agree with. And that's just fine, because some of the things that you believe to be good and true, other people in the room do not agree with. And that's okay. We're an amazingly diverse group of people. Think about the diversity that we have in our company. over 24,000 employees in 32 countries. I have the great honor of traveling the world, as Jay said, and visiting with our employees. I travel literally 40 to 45 weeks a year, every year. As a result of that, ladies, I have an excellent marriage. Great marriage. You can't get in trouble if you're not there. That's what I figure, right? I have the great honor, it's not true, my wife is very understanding and knows I love what I do. Yeah, there's incredible diversity in our company. When I meet these people in different parts of the world, I think, my goodness, they're so different. But think about the diversity that we have right here in this room. Right in this room this afternoon. Each one of us, each person, walked into this room today from a totally unique life experience. I don't care if you grew up in the same town with someone else in the room. I don't care if you grew up in the same house with someone else in the room. Your life experience has been totally unique from everybody else. Each of us is living today from a unique human perspective. Now, human beings develop their values based on what they experience in their lives. Now, I understand some of our values come with our DNA, and I do believe that. But the bulk of the values that we have, we develop as we live. And every day that we live, we're evolving our values. Our values change. Your values today are different from what they will be a month from now. Now, it's hard to conceptualize. If you have trouble seeing that, try this experiment. Take yourself back 10 years. Go back to 2006. Where'd you live? Where'd you work? What'd your family look like 10 years ago? What were the things that were really, really important to you 10 years ago? Now come back to today. Some of the things that were very important to you 10 years ago really don't matter anymore. And some of the things that are critically important to you today, you didn't even know about 10 years ago. People, concepts. That's because every day that we live, we evolve our values, and we each are doing it individually. If that's true, how the heck do we ever get along? How do you get along in a business for sure, in a family even? Well, philosophers have helped us with this. This guy, John Rawls, Harvard professor, very important philosopher in the second half of the 20th century. He developed he did a lot of work on this. And one of the concepts he developed was called the concept of the overlapping consensus. And what he said was, yes, there are many things about which you and I will never, ever agree. And that's okay, because there's a whole bunch more in the middle where we do agree, where we overlap. Some people call that shared values. It's how we get along. It's how we get along in a business, how we get along in a family. In the corporate world, we change the terminology. We call it a corporate consensus and corporate values. This, men and women, in the middle there, where it says corporate values, that's your ethics. That's ethics. It's the stuff that we sit down in a room and agree that we should do. Most of the values that we deal with in a corporate setting when we talk about ethics have to do with human value. Human beings have value. Now, they have different kinds of value in different ways. First type of value that human beings have is called instrumental value. Instrumental value is the value that you bring to the table at your company or in your profession. It's your skill. Each of us, some of the people in this room are excellent at legal issues. Some of the people in this room, I had dinner last night with a charming lady who is an expert in human resources. Each of us, each person in the room has some unique value. That's your instrumental value. Second type of value that human beings have is called bestowed value. Bestowed value is the value that is given to you by someone else. It's a title. It's an authority that you're given. The president of a company is bestowed that value by the board of directors. Now, here's the problem with human beings, one of the many. Sometimes people with bestowed value think they have instrumental value in everything. Do you know that person? Did you used to work for that person? I'm in charge, therefore I have all the answers. Huge problem in corporate ethics right there. Let me give you an example of this. We're very blessed in our company. Our chairman, CEO, my boss, Pat Gallagher, wonderful man, a spiritually strong man, a man who believes in the values of our company. So our building in Chicago, in the western suburbs of Chicago, is a 25-story building. So I sit on the 25th floor, Pat sits on the 25th floor. So one morning, 11:45, I walk down the hall, I stick my head in Pat's office, I say, hey, you want to go to lunch? Yeah, I don't have anything to do, let's go to lunch. So we walk around, we get in the elevator, we push G for garage, coming down from the 25th floor. Somewhere between the 23rd and the 22nd floor, the elevator stops. It doesn't move, it's dead, it's jammed, stopped. Pat Gallagher can yell at that switch panel for a half an hour and order that elevator to move, and it ain't moving, right? The guy I want in the elevator with me is not Pat Gallagher. The guy I want in the elevator is a guy named Billy Jaramsky. Billy Jaramsky runs our building. He knows everything about our building. He always has a screwdriver in his back pocket, right? Billy knows how to take that panel off and short something out, and boom, we keep moving again. In that case, Bill Jaramsky's instrumental value trumps, I won't use that word, Bill is more important than Pat Gallagher's bestowed value. You see the difference there. Interesting concept. Third type of value that human beings have, called inherent value. It's the value that human beings have simply because we are human beings. It's that value that we need to focus on as we develop an ethical system. It's the inherent value that our employees have, that our members of that all of our stakeholders have, based on the fact that they are simply human beings. Now, I told you I wanted to talk about a thing called the third ring. This is how we developed our ethical system in our company. This is how we solidified it. I've done some writing on this. There's a number of other companies that are using it. I believe that there are three rings to an ethical system. When you develop your system of ethics, there are three things you need to focus on. The first is compliance. Now, I said compliance and ethics are different. They are, but we must work very closely together. I report to the chairman of the board as the chief ethics officer and directly to the board of directors. Our compliance department is within the legal department, and that's where most companies will find it. So our chief compliance officer reports to our general counsel, who then reports to our CEO, okay? So this is how we separate it. Compliance is critically important. We must make a decision. Are we or are we not going to obey the law? Once we've made that decision, we can send the lawyers back to their offices. We don't need them now. We're done. We're going to obey the law. That's what we decided. You may think, well, all companies decide to obey the law. Not true. Everybody in the room knows of companies that make conscious decisions to break the law. We've decided to obey the law. So we're pretty much done with compliance now in developing our ethical system. We're going to call those lawyers daily with questions on things. The second ring of an ethical system is a thing referred to as universal values. Now you hear this term. This term has been around for centuries. If you go back 2,500 years, there was a document called the Delphic Canon. The Greeks had a list of 180 things that were the right thing to do. It was a lengthy list, and most of it has been lost now. The current most convenient document to use is a document called the United Nations Global Compact. Some of you are signatories of that compact. We are signatories of the United Nations Global Compact. It's a list of 10 things that people have coming to them as human beings. Now, if you can think that the United Nations could sit down in a room and decide on 10 things, I got to tell you, it's a pretty good list, right? Take a look at it, Google it, and read it. It's a great list. It covers things that are, we believe globally, that people have coming to them. Now, if you look, in 2004, I did a study of the Fortune 500 companies. And of the Fortune 500 companies in 2004, every one of them in their statement in their corporate governance section of their website, their code of conduct or ethics, every one of them dealt with the term compliance. About 50 dealt with universal values. Today, I redid the study in 2014. Today, all 500 have compliance addressed, and about 400 of them have universal values addressed. It's becoming not required, but expected that a company will support universal values. Now, some of those things are supported in various countries by legal means. Most of the things that you read on the United Nations Global Compact are actually laws in our country, but not everywhere. Some countries they're not. And so companies must make a decision. Are we going to respect universal rights everywhere? And if we are, let's put it in our statement. So that is basically what the bulk of the companies, if you look at the Fortune 500 today, that's where they stop. There is a third ring of an ethical system, and it is the unique values that we as a group of people in a company sit down in a room and say, these are the things we value that are over and above the things we must do and the things we are expected to do. They are the things that make us unique. When you look at this third ring of a company's ethical system, what you're basically doing is looking at their culture. When you talk about the culture of your company and that it's unique, and we all have unique cultures, this is what you're talking about. You're going to obey the law, you're going to respect the inherent rights of human beings, but you need to go a step beyond that, and you need to identify the values that you as a group of people feel are unique, and they will be different everywhere. And depending upon those values doesn't mean one company is better than the other. What it means is that you're unique. Some of the values we have in our company are unique. Other companies don't have those values. Other companies have values that are also unique. They're all good companies, assuming that they follow what they say they will do. So do you know about these things? I think you do. I spent a little time on your website, and I looked. This is an amazing organization. I've never seen anything like this anywhere in the country, I will say, anywhere in the world that I've been, and I've been everywhere. I've never seen something like this. It is incredibly inspiring what you're doing here. 9 times a year, you sit down in a room and listen to some mope like me talk to you, but you are reinforcing the values that each of your companies have, and you've brought them together into this organization. This is the stuff I'm talking about: responsibility to self and others. There's no law that says you have to do that. That's ethics. That's not compliance. Lead with integrity. Wow, I love that. That's ethics. Inspire trust. Okay? We just heard the critical importance of trust in an organization. You're doing this in this organization, and I'm going to guess that most of your companies are also doing this because you're getting it from here. It's critically important that you go beyond those first 2 rings of an ethical system. We have a document called the Gallagher Way. Jay referred to it. I refer you to it. I'm not trying to advertise for Gallagher. I don't have to do that. I refer you to it because I'd love for you to steal it. I mean, I'm serious. Don't ever tell anybody I said that. Keep it quiet. Turn that tape off for a minute, will you? Our general counsel will shoot me. Walt Bay will shoot me if he heard I say that. But I do. I invite you to download it. It's a list of 25 things that we believe in, that we believe we should do. And it tells our people globally exactly what it is we believe in. What are the things that we expect our people to do that go beyond obeying the law and respecting universal rights? I invite you to look at it. And I mean that seriously. If you're developing a system and you need a format to use it. Don't use the exact words, because then I'll get in trouble and you'll get in trouble and they're going to sue you, and it's all a bad thing. But let me give you an example of a couple of the things that we have in that document. This is I believe this is the most important of the 25 tenets. It's number 2 in the Gallagher Way. We support one another, we believe in one another, we acknowledge and respect the ability of one another. The document was written in 1984 by Bob Gallagher, one of the founders of the company, son of the founder. Company's 89 years old now. I don't know what Bob was thinking when he wrote this, but I do know that it applies to, I'm guessing, every company in here. Let me tell you what I think he was thinking. I believe that our company, and probably your company too, has 4 assets, and only 4. In all the offices, all the branches, all the divisions, everywhere I've been, multiple times, everywhere in the world, I have only been able to find 4 assets in our company. We have a lot of office space. We have some insurance company relationships and programs. We have a lot of computers. And then we have the people, us. That's it, nothing else. Now, which one of those assets means anything? Anybody can rent an office, anybody can do a deal with an insurance company, and anybody can buy a computer. Our people are our company. They do the work. They control the relationships. They set the reputation. We don't have a factory somewhere with punch presses and rolled steel. Our people are it. There's over 24,000 of them scattered around the world. They are the most important asset we have. And we celebrate that, and we tell our people that, and we encourage them to challenge us on that. And let me tell you, they do. They catch us in things, and they challenge us, and we back off. Critically important to us. Number 7 in the Gallagher way, empathy for the other person is not a weakness. The first one, I'm saying I respect our people. The second one, I'm saying we worry about each other. We worry about each other in our company. We really do. I have stories I could spend the rest of the day telling you stories of empathy between employees and among employees. That's ethics. There's no law that says we have to do either of those things. Loyalty and respect are earned, not dictated. I know what this means. This young man over here, Jay Eshelman, just got a big promotion. And I'm going to tell you something. What we're telling him, just because we gave you a big new title, does not mean you're going to be respected. You need to earn the respect of your followers. Leaders, I like to say leaders should every once in a while turn around and look behind them. Make sure somebody's back there. Because if there's nobody back there, you're not leading anybody, you're just out for a stroll, right? Leaders must be respectful of their followers. It's critically important. Let me move to the third subject that I'd like to share with you. I had a long session with the pastor of our church once on this, and we're trying to figure this out, and it got me thinking in this direction. And I think that this is probably the cause of more problems in industry than anything else. When arrogance becomes a virtue and humility becomes a vice. It's a huge problem everywhere in the world, and unfortunately, I think that's the condition we're in right now in many places. So I had a conversation with our pastor, and then I sat down with Pat. One day, Pat Gallagher and I were at lunch, and I said, you know, Pat, I'm doing a study on this, on humility and arrogance, and I've come to a conclusion. I said, I have decided that the best leaders in our company are humble. Well, I thought the boy was going to fall off his chair when I said that. I mean, he's an Irishman and an insurance broker. He looked at me and he said, humble? What are you smoking? He said, humble? How do you sell insurance if you're humble? I said, no, you don't understand. We must define what we mean by the term humble. And then I said this to him. I said, I believe that humility is being aware that you can make a mistake and that you will make mistakes, and recognizing that the people who report to you have better ideas than you do. If you include them in your discussions, you will get a better result. Humility is making sure that you know you can screw up and that you'll be protected from screwing up if you allow your people to interact with you. I think it's a huge difference. So he and I started, it was an interesting opening to a study that he joined me in, this study of humility and arrogance. And we've been reading some books I'm going to give you a few references to read at the end here. But we started reading about this stuff and started ruminating on it. And I came to this conclusion. I think that arrogant people have issues. And I think they can go to humility. And I think it ultimately is where most folks end up. I think the first thing about arrogance, early arrogance, grows not out of feeling I am the best, it's out of insecurity. When you see people who are incredibly arrogant, who will tell you how wonderful they are, I believe very sincerely that those people, most of them, are insecure. Okay? I'm going to give you a personal story on this, if I may. I'm going to tell you a little bit of how I went from, I'm still arrogant, but I'm working toward humility, okay? I'm trying to get there. But let me tell you how this happened with me. So 1981, I had been working for another company, and I got fed up. I thought I was doing all the work and they were getting all the money, so I left. Walked in the house that night, said to my wife, as she was taking care of 5 kids, and stay-at-home mom, I said I quit my job today. Whew, wow, that didn't go over real big. Actually, she supported me very well. I decided that I was going to start my own company, and I started my own company, and I decided that in order to be successful, I had to look successful. And so I got the best Brooks Brothers suit I could find. I rented office space in the Chicago Loop, and I started telling people how good I am at this business. And I knew that I had to do that because I was insecure. If I told them really that I'm scared to death about this, they wouldn't have bought insurance from me, right? That was what my mind was saying. So I kept going on that way for a couple of years. Arrogance matures when you're successful. So the arrogant person, the insecure person who has success, all of a sudden starts believing his own headlines, right? It did work. We were making some money. The little company was growing. I am the smartest guy in this business. I know what I'm doing. The other guys haven't figured it out yet. And I just kept growing, and it was phenomenal. And the bigger we got, the more arrogant I got. It was absolutely fun. There were no rules. I was in charge, right? I think the beginning of humility results from a swift kick in the butt. So let me tell you about the kick in the... My wife actually... shouldn't tell you this. I'll tell you this. My wife once gave me a pair of boxer shorts with a footprint on the back, so I'd never forget, all right? So I got off the plane in Sacramento, California one day to go call on a client. My bookkeeper called me and said, Tom, I need $250,000 to meet the month's expenses. I said, what the heck are you calling me for? $250,000? She said, yeah. I said, really? She said, yeah. I had lost touch. I was so busy being arrogant that I wasn't looking at the details. Now, good news was I hadn't spent all the money we made, so I called my bank and I said, transfer this money into the company. I will tell you this, and I say this to you because, I know it's not appropriate to talk spiritual matters in groups, but I am in Oklahoma, so I think I'm okay with it. Got down on my knees in a hotel room and I said, I can't do this alone. I've screwed up. I've screwed up. I need help. I just need to figure out how to do this. Immediately felt a peace come over me, and I went back to Chicago and I called together all my employees, not all my employees, there were about 8 of them. I called them together and I said, look, I've screwed up. You haven't. We're spending more money than we're making. We have to make a change here. We're going to do this without hurting anybody other than me, but we're all going to take a little haircut here. But I'll make it up to you when we get back. We need to fix this problem. And these people gathered around me, they helped me, and we got the thing back in shape literally within 18 months. We fixed the problem. wasn't that complicated. So I tell you that story, and I know speakers that talk about this stuff, you have more credibility if you went bankrupt or you went to jail. I didn't do either of those things. I didn't go bankrupt. I've never spent a day in jail other than visiting the little Bible study thing in a jail, but I've never been an inmate in a jail, okay? But I did screw up. Here's the interesting thing. Humility matures when you figure out that you do better than when you were arrogant. You're more successful when you are humble. Huh? You do better in your business, and good leaders are humble. I absolutely believe that. I think it's the biggest problem we have in the world today in industry, the problem of arrogance being a virtue. I love David Brooks. I don't know if you read him. He's an editorialist in the New York Times, very bright man. He wrote this: success leads to the greatest failure, which is pride. Failure leads to the greatest success, which is humility and learning. In order to fulfill yourself, you have to forget yourself. In order to find yourself, you have to lose yourself. I really believe that. I do. I think that good companies develop good ethical systems. Good companies obey the law. They recognize universal rights, but then they go beyond that to that third ring, and they talk about the values that are unique to them, that they believe. And I believe humility needs to be one of them. Humility in leadership is absolutely critical. Let me give you a couple books to read, and then we're going to have time for a few questions or fights, if you want, okay? The quote I just gave you from David Brooks is a book called The Road to Character. It's a wonderful book. He talks about people who've gone through what I just explained, from arrogance to humility. He doesn't use those terms. He uses a similar concept. But he talks the philosophy, talks about a concept called Adam 1 and Adam 2. And I highly recommend the book. The Adam 1, Adam 2 concept, I don't have time to go into with you today, but read the book and you will get great benefit from that. Then he goes in that book and he talks about 8 or 9 people in history who did this. And it's fascinating to read. Second book that I recommend is a book that has not gotten the type of press that it should. I was speaking at a convention, a very large convention in London 2 years ago, and this lady was on the program with me, and we were seated together, and she spoke before me, and she blew me away. And so I bought her book, which she was conveniently selling there at the thing, had her autograph it. The book is called Willful Blindness, and you know what that means. Willful blindness is when we're doing things we know we shouldn't do, but we keep doing them anyway. Right? You know, Trojan horse. Go ahead, pull it inside there. Whoa, what's the noise inside there? That's all right, pull it in. Right? Willful Blindness, wonderful book that talks about this type of thing. And the third is a great, and I apologize for this. This guy, John Dixon, is a Texan. And I know that's a problem here in Oklahoma. Wally Bryce, do you all know Wally? I hope very few of you do. He's back there, and he's with our company, and I love to make fun of Wally. He's one of my best friends, but he told me earlier today that he was down in Texas and talking to one of our people down there, and they said, you know, this wall that Donald Trump wants to build, I think we should build it between Oklahoma and Texas. He said, we're going to pay for the whole thing, the Texans, right? Just got that one, huh? Took a minute. Anyway, John Dixon, wonderful guy. He wrote a book called Humilitas. It'll blow you away. It's a phenomenal book. He's an evangelical Christian. The book does not read that way. The only way you know that is in the preface. It's a book you can read, and it's just so logical and so good. And it talks about all of this stuff that I'm referring to you. So I invite you to go home with a couple ideas. The first idea, please understand the difference between compliance and ethics. It's critically important that you get that. Second thing, if in your company you have a system of ethics that stops at compliance, and most of them do, you need to expand it at least to universal values. Google the United Nations Global Compact and use those things. And if you really want to do the job properly, go to the third ring. And if you need more detail on that, send me an email, and I've got a white paper that I can send you. I'm happy to do that for you, talking about how to actually do that. And then finally, look for the arrogance in your own conduct. I know I've got it. I try desperately not to be arrogant, but I am. And I've got a unique problem in that when I travel around the world, I'm representing the chairman of the board, and so people are scared to death when I'm coming, and that makes you arrogant. I'll tell you, it really does. You need to work constantly on it. We all do. God bless you. Thanks you so much for inviting me here. This has been great, and I'll take some questions. Do we have time for a couple questions? Okay, good. Or challenges or fights? Okay, all right. Do you want to fight? Yes, sir.
What do you think the ethical challenges are that people will face in the next year?
Oh, wow. The next year, the ethical challenges, I think, are coming to, I don't know where this fits in an ethical system, but I believe one of the biggest challenges we're going to have is dealing with the outcome of this presidential election. Because, as was said earlier, I'm an old man. I've been around a long time, voted in a lot of presidential elections. I've never seen the level of anger that there is today in this election. And it's very frightening, and I think that's going to be an issue. We are going to, we already have encouraged our branch managers and our people, do not allow the discussion to come up. Do not allow it to come up in your office, because there's no winning it. My wife's a biblical scholar. She teaches Bible study, very involved in community Bible study, CBS. Some of you have been there. And they instruct their leaders in community Bible study, do not allow political conversation. Stop it right there. I think that's going to be one of our biggest issues.